As part of your proxy statement filed with the SEC, you will disclose a few things about your company's independent auditor, including details of any non-audit services provided by your auditor that are pre-approved by the audit committee. Today on Zippy Point. I'm Brock Romanek, and I'm a big fan of yous. In Section 202 of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, it was mandated that audit committees pre-approve all audit and permissible non-audit services to be provided by a company's independent auditor. Section 201 of the Sarbanes-Oxley lays out 9 categories of prohibited non-audit services. The SEC has provided guidance on what types of services are outside the scope of being permissible, including these FAQs from the SEC's Office of Chief Accountant. For those non-audit services permitted to be delivered by a company's auditor, the SEC has auditor independence rules, which state that companies, management in other words, can use their independent auditors to provide these permissible non-audit services unless those services are first pre-approved by the audit committee. So under Rule 201C7 of Regulation XX, that's the rules that guide you here about what's permissible or not, audit committees are permitted to approve services on an engagement basis for non-audit services from your auditor, and they're allowed to delegate authority to one or more members of the audit committee to approve these on a one-on-one basis. So audit committees have their pre-approval policies and procedures, but they still have the ability to approve new services, new non-audit services that might come up on a one-off basis during the year. The engagement for the annual audit typically is required by corporate policy to be specifically approved by the audit committee each year on a one-off basis, so it's not covered as part of the pre-approval policy. So let's talk about Rule 201C7 of SX. It states that if the audit committee relies on pre-approval policies and procedures, those policies and procedures must be detailed as to the particular service. The audit committee must be informed on a timely basis of each service, and the policies and procedures must not include the delegation of audit committee responsibilities to management. The rule also provides for a de minimis waiver of the pre-approval requirements for non-audit services in limited circumstances. What to disclose? So item 9E5 of Schedule 14A is what requires disclosure in your proxy about the audit committee's pre-approval policies and procedures relating both to audit and non-audit services. This is one of those disclosure items that's not reliant on Regulation SK. It's a one-liner in item Schedule 14A itself. Now, the purpose of this pre-approval disclosure is to illustrate that the audit committee is appropriately overseeing its relationship with the independent auditor. I should also mention that item 14 in Part 3 of Form 10K requires that this item 9E disclosure in Schedule 14A be included in the 10K, and of course that's usually incorporated by reference from the proxy rather than being in the 10K itself. So here's an oddity. Without an SK item, the guidance for what the disclosure should look like comes from the SEC's 2003 adopting release for the auditor independence rules, which gives companies the option to either describe the pre-approval policies in the proxy itself or attach the policies. So you either describe the pre-approval policy in the disclosure of the proxy, or you attach the pre-approval policy itself to the proxy, like an appendix. I imagine not many people know about this. One, because if you got into this field after 2003, you're probably not going back and reading old adopting releases, but maybe you are. Maybe you're a very good lawyer. And also, companies don't do this. They don't append their policies. They describe it instead. It's usually just a paragraph or two. We're going to see some examples here in a minute. Here's an excerpt from that 2003 adopting release. It's very short. The description, the disclosure must be clear, concise, and understandable. And then you can read here that you have this appendix option. So here's an example from Pfizer's proxy. It describes how prior to the annual engagement of the auditor, management submits a list of expected services and fees it wants out of the auditor, split it by the type of category of service that you'll find in your audit fee table: audit related, tax, and all other. And then the audit committee decides whether to approve that. The disclosure in Pfizer's proxy also talks about we might need to hire the auditor during the year for non-audit services that we didn't think of before that doesn't fall within the policy, and then we'll consider whether to do that on a one-by-one basis. This is a standard disclosure next, that we might delegate pre-approval authority to one or more of our audit committee members, and then that audit committee member will report back to the audit committee what they did. And then finally, FISA requires the auditor to report actual fees versus budget periodically throughout the year by one of those 4 categories: audit, audit-related, tax, or all others. Here's another example. This is Microsoft. Each year the committee approves the terms on which the independent auditors engage for the next year. At least quarterly, the committee reviews and, if appropriate, approves services to be performed by the auditor, and reviews a report summarizing fiscal year to date, what's happened, including an updated projection of what it's going to cost us. And then the committee can delegate authority to one of our members, and then we'll review each quarter what that member has done. And then Microsoft mentions that it uses a centralized internal system to collect requests from people within the company for non-audit services. See my 3 separate Vid-Guides about disclosure of audit fees, the audit fee table, auditor ratification, and then a third one about audit committee disclosure, links to which are beneath this video.